Now let's go to the next discussion. This time around, of course, our focus will be on the huge amount the Nigerian government uses to service debts annually. Now, the federal government spent 927.74 billion naira from January to June this year to service the nation's domestic and external debts.
Now, this is about 7 billion naira, higher than the projected sum expected to be spent from January to June this year. Now, for domestic debt, the government spent 871.94 billion to service domestic debt from January to June.
Well, the amount for foreign debt service is 55.8 billion naira. Nigeria's public debt has increased significantly in recent years as the federal government has increased borrowing to finance its budget deficit.
Right, we have a financial analyst, Lekon Shote, with us right here in the studio. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Of course, you'll try to, help us make sense of all of this. First off, is Nigeria in a fix? Government is saying it needs to borrow to fix the economy and, of course, to diversify the economy. And yet you have the IMF on the one hand saying, look, you need to put a brake on this borrowing because it's not going to help in the long term.
There's no doubt that Nigeria is in a fix. If you recall, in 2015, the outgoing Minister of Finance said that we are borrowing to pay overheads, to pay salaries. And the current Minister of Finance said about a year after, that's last year, 2016, that as a matter of fact, the wage bill, I think, is 165 billion or something like that, and that we are borrowing to pay. What other evidence do you need except that this 2017 budget, about 2.36 trillion, is deficit. Deficit, there's no other way to call it than a debt. And then you are going to pay about 1.6, it's about 1.7, roughly 1.8 trillion in debt servicing. So that means you are borrowing to pay off
what you borrow.
Yeah, what you borrow. So it's in a fix, if you ask me. And the total debt profile, if I understand very well, is about 19 trillion.
19 trillion.
And
yeah.
That's huge.
And the worrisome part of it really is that the quality and utilization of the loans acquired are the cause of worry of many Nigerians, that if you're borrowing to pay, it means that, like she said, you're putting the country at risk. You're putting it in a fix that it might not be able to wriggle out of. But if you use such funds to engage in capital projects, utilization and building infrastructure in place, you will be able to make it at the long run.
You see, there's a question you haven't asked me. Let me use that, let me answer that, and then to use that to answer your question. We have a foreign reserve. And then when you ask, what is that foreign reserve for? They tell us that it's supposed to finance imports. That means you have already decided in your mind, following these classic economists who ran our system, our economy during the colonial eras, that, oh, keep some money abroad so that you can finance imports. How about using your export? Listen, you are
those
taking...
monies to finance exports, maybe?
Yeah, no. You use that money to... You have proper macroeconomic policies on ground that will get the economy itself going. Let's even take care of ourselves first. Let's forget about export in the meantime. Let's feed ourselves to start with.
Yes.
Let's grow our agro-allied industry so that it can provide inputs into our industry. Let's start that to start with. You know, rather than you keeping money in order to import. Which is even, it's a bit, not good for the I don't understand that thinking. Ab initio, you have decided that you are going to keep money so that you will be importing things. I don't, it's not...
Was this a trick played on Nigeria
from
day one, and we have the economics upside down?
I remember the economics textbooks we read. There was some chap, J.L. Hansen.
Yes.
You know, it was a textbook we read in the 60s, 70s. And this was his thinking. This was what they told us. And so our people now adopt that, and they, keep maintaining that. I don't understand that.
Meaning that the government has not set a scale of proper scale of preference.
No, exactly. You don't even understand what you want to do. It's like you are blindsided. You are following this Eurocentric, North American thinking, what they sold to us. Rather than reviewing and say, wait a minute, are we supposed to be doing this? The Minister of Finance is telling us that well, we are going to refinance.
Yes.
You know, such that we take cheaper foreign loans, and then we, shall we say,
jettison domestic loans.
Now, it makes sense actually, because
with under 3% interest rates.
Yeah, it makes a lot. It makes a lot of sense. Then, when you have an import-oriented economy, what it means is that you are already reducing. By the time you are going to service, because you are going to be paying that in forex, you are going to.
Of course.
Yeah. So you are now reducing the basket of forex that you have to finance even the forex, the import that you say you are preserving the foreign reserves for.
But would you blame the
So
government?
what that then means that if you look at the law of supply and demand, that means supply has now reduced. What happens? The forex price goes up.
But would you blame the government really for preferring foreign loans at this time? Because the interest rates are quite expensive, very high.
It's cheaper. But how did we even get to where we are at the domestic? Who is setting interest rate? CBN is setting 14%. Then by the time you put the spread, you're looking at about 20-something percent. You understand? Now, you have money. Central bank puts the money, or federal government puts the money in commercial banks, and then issues treasury bills to take his own money
back,
and then pay. I don't. Maybe somebody needs to explain something.
And obviously, we don't even understand it ourselves, and that's why we have you here to explain it for us, so that the ordinary man can understand. Now, government is saying that, look, our debt to GDP ratio is still quite low compared to other, even African countries and the European countries.
One of the lowest in Africa.
17.7%. And so it will not do much damage, if at all, to the economy in the long run.
Listen, if you are going to, listen, you say, you just say something with your opening, that if we are financing capital projects, something that will bring in more money,
and is sustainable.
It is sustainable. Then I don't have issues with that. But if it is as admitted by even the Minister of Finance, that we are using the money to service loans, and then we are using the money to pay salaries, that means we're just throwing away money. And then I'm sure you've heard last week, Nigeria Delta Minister are now talking.
They are planning. Yeah, we already discussed that
that
this
now
morning.
Affects the forex again, for you to be able to service the foreign debt. And it's like a bind. Somebody needs to really think out of the box and look at the whole thing and say, wait a minute, what macroeconomic policies do we need? In any case, when you borrow money, even for capital projects, isn't there something called concession? Is there something called privatization that we can do and use private initiative?
Public-private partnership.
Yes. Look at telephone companies now. Nobody remembers the NITEL anymore. But we get what we need. We get access to telephone and the internet, which is affecting us positively. And even the World Bank, earlier this year, was worried about the Nigerian economy, saying that the debt service to ratio to our ratio of GDP is quite low. That with reduced earnings on the part of the Nigerian government, that it might even render the servicing of the debt and even paying off the debt unsustainable. Almost impossible. Exactly. So, you know, I don't get it. That's why some of us keep saying that this government needs to have an economic team. You know, they keep saying they have an economic management team. That's different from a group of people, eggheads, whose job is just to begin to every day think about the economy, look at every aspect, and recommend to those running the economy that, look, you need to look at this aspect, you need to look. They do research, they do a lot of write-ups, they present position papers and explain to the government that this is what you ought to be. They review their own thing. Somebody who is, you have what you call National Economic Council, chairman by the Vice President. Who are the members? Governors. Who are CEOs in their rights? Who are spread across it? Who don't have time to sit down, you know, as a group on a regular basis.
They are mostly lawyers too.
Exactly. And the central bank governor, he's busy. He's a CEO on his own. And then these guys, they are even busy to start with. Apart from the fact that some of them are PDP, some of them are, and they don't want to even have a cohesive plan. And because they don't even generate revenue internally. Exactly. They know that they will always get something at the center. You know, so I don't know. We need to have a group of people who will look at the economy on a regular basis and come up with ideas about, should we just take what the Europeans tell us in terms of economics? Don't we need to redefine?
So what do we make of the Monetary Policy Committee then that comes up with some of these, interest rates, all those figures that
I'll tell you something.
The average Nigerian
they
doesn't
have
seem
my
to
sympathies.
understand.
I don't think they're going to be able to do anything. When you don't have proper working macroeconomic policies, listen, they've been hired to do a job. There's a central bank, has its TOR, terms of reference, what it's supposed to be doing, and then you have a central bank. It has to sort of make as if it's working. They have to earn their pay one way or the other, so they are just plugging.
All motion, no movement?
They are just plugging. It's not as if they have a fantastic, groundbreaking approach. They will never have.
Well, many have suggested that
yeah,
agriculture is the way to go, and you said that, of course, we see some form of movement in that aspect by this government, but many are saying it's even very slow.
It's very slow.
The first approach is even to say that you're exporting yams and cassava.
Listen, exporting yams, that doesn't impress me. I understand that 67% of yam produced in the world is produced in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
How many Nigerians have access to yam? To start with.
Let me add even to that. Nigeria is the largest exporter of leather in the world.
That's right.
And of course, we import finished
supposing
goods.
This leather, supposing we engage
cocoa,
the Aba
second
footwear and bag manufacturing structure there, and say, listen, these hides and the skins that is going to Pomo or that is going abroad, why don't we use it? Have some sort of synergy, an arrangement between the Aba footwear makers. You recall that the governor of Abia State, I remember, sometime, was it late last year or early this year, he brought some pairs of shoes, manufactured in Aba, gave to Obasanjo. I thought that was a great opportunity for somebody to blow this thing and let the government get them to engage.
Well, Saraki tried, the Senate president, with the Make Nigeria drive.
What did he do?
Doesn't seem to be going
Buy Nigeria growth.
Listen.
But they don't buy Nigerian products.
Talk is cheap. That's not the point. That you bought, that's symbolic. You need to engage. Let's have a communication line between the Aba footwear producers and the people who produce the hides and skins. And this let there be a value chain.
This
let there be a linkage between them.
The kind of support MSMEs are getting or not getting in Nigeria to get loan is one problem, and that
which loan at what percentage?
What percentage? Interest rates, exactly.
If the CBN is already talking about 14%, then you now add the spread. You're already working against them, and I keep saying it. Listen. We must remember that we are competing against the world. Nigeria is no longer isolated. We were never even isolated to start with. It's even worse now in this era of globalization. With technology breaking through everywhere. You can't, there's no place. Listen, people are running companies now in Russia, from New York. Every day there's communication. You see each other on screens, you talk. Somebody in America is looking at the factory that is going on, the work going on in China factory. There are people in Europe who are trying to engage some fishermen in Nigeria. These people, these small-scale fish farmers somewhere in Djibouti, they are going to establish like a satellite so that they can see the processes from, growing the fish, if you like, if you can use that language, into drying it and then packing it into when you get to the ports and ship it. They are watching.
Which means they are preparing for the future. And now that you even talk about that, we have an educational system that's not necessarily preparing for even the next decade. Many jobs and disciplines may be totally irrelevant in another 10 years or so, but that's a totally different kettle of fish. Now, the government is saying, look, the rising cost of servicing domestic debt, which is their fault to start with. Has led to them having to realign its strategy. Number one, rebalancing the debt portfolio from 84.16% distribution between domestic and external debt to 60-40. How much difference really would this make? Whether it's in the short, medium, or
I think we dealt with this earlier on. The point is that you are now going to be using, according to the Minister of Finance, short-term debts to raise finance, that is for long-term, which should be cheaper, and then you convert to cheaper foreign loans. Like I said, it makes all the sense. Makes sense. I mean, I would do that. If my loan I'm supposed to be paying 10% to you. And then somebody else tells me that I can pay 5%. Oh, yes.
Less.
I will take his loan and disengage you quietly. So that I can, I don't
But
know.
that doesn't seem to be the case. You're not disengaging me. You're only servicing the debt. So you've not even tackled the real principal, the main...
The principal. Yeah, just,
that's it.
Exactly. You see,
so you still come back to square one.
Bind. Again, we must have a fundamental thinking about these issues. That, listen, what do we even want to do? What is our economic plans? What do we really want to do about this thing? It's not enough for somebody who is working on a daily basis, who is engaging, going through the grind of running the economy, to be the one to reflect. You know, of course, you have some insight as you are working, but there must be somebody or some group who can engage with you and think through with you. Some staff officers, some economics advisory committee that can engage with you and say, okay, do you know you are blindsided in this area. Let's provide another perspective for you so that you can understand, and then can you please work on this?
And
don't you think you need, that's why you have these task forces and the several things. It's not as if there are no people who would do this, but because of blindsidedness. You know, you need to have a new perspective.
And talking about task forces, really, of course, expectedly, that's what's supposed to happen. But then, Catherine Patilo, as the IMF chief of fiscal policy in October during a monetary briefing, said that 2/3 of all Nigeria's tax revenue is even expended on debt servicing alone. 2/3 of taxes you're generating, meaning that the efforts the government is putting in place to rein in taxes just going down the drain. Exactly.
You see, we need to engage. As far as I'm concerned, we're not even paying enough tax. A lot of people are not a lot of people are not even in a tax drag. Even as we are talking.
But the latest revelation that 800,000 companies have never paid tax.
Can you imagine? So, as far as I'm concerned, more efforts need to be done in that direction. But seriously now, I think the idea is this: let us have an economic policy that does not emphasize import, but rather let's even feed ourselves to start with.
Somebody wants,
as my wife always tells me, tell them that they should first feed all of us to start with.
Okay, well, we're on. The director is screaming. The director says we have to wrap. No, we have to wrap it up. I know you want to talk. We want to talk with them. We just have to wrap it up.
The economy.
Everybody's passionate about it because everybody is affected, truly. But thank you very much for your analysis. Where are the Tony Elumelus of this world and Jim Ovias? Leko Shote, financial analyst and columnist. Thank you very much for your analysis. Of course, every Nigerian is concerned about this because this is what translates into their welfare at the end of the day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot.